The Power Moms Network, empowering moms to lift the world.
Welcome. I'm Riley Karsh.
I'm Tova Kopan.
We are thrilled to bring you the We Go Boldly podcast.
Let's talk big burning questions, life changes, and maybe a bit of personal business.
Let's be bold and brave together. Are you ready?
I am. Here comes the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to We Go Boldly, the podcast where we are thrilled to be a part of the Power Moms Network. At Power Moms Network, we are empowering moms and creating a community of mothers mentoring other moms to greatness. It is, as I always say, a lovely place to be. We encourage you to check it out. Join us there. It's a lot of fun and informational and satisfying, and it helps you feel less alone in your motherhood journey if you are partaking of that process. All of that being said, it is season 11, as you all know. We are busy unbecoming, right? Like, what a weird sentence. We are in the process of working through the ways in which we can let go and or accept the things from our past that we may have learned, experienced, lived through, that have developed some like unhealthy thought processes and habits in our lives. So it is very exciting interview day. We are thrilled when we have interviews. We love talking to people, getting other people's perspectives. And I'm excited about our guests today. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, this conversation. Before we dive in to talking to our guest, I am going to, of course, say hello to Tova and welcome her to the show. How are you today, Tova? We're twinsies without meaning to be, and it's exciting. If you're on our YouTube channel, you'll get to see it.
So a couple of things. First of all, I also am very excited that we're twinning today.
Yeah.
That brings me great joy. And second of all, I am going to answer this question honestly, which is like, I am rough today.
Okay.
Today is one of those days where like there's not a lot of space between like me and my emotions. It's like one of those, I think about it like I don't know, is it like Halloween where like the veil is thin or something?
Yeah.
Right.
Or like
That's
at
like
a fall solstice or winter solstice.
yeah, like that's kind of how
Absolutely.
I feel. And it's like, ooh, the boundary is low. And so I actually just got off a call where I had to call a coworker, and I was like, I need a pep talk really fast. And I am still getting over COVID. And I don't know if it's a combo of allergies and COVID, but I have like a sinus headache. But I also think more than anything, it's my body reacting to what's happening emotionally.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, this is the conversation that I need to be having right now.
Yeah, this is really good timing because today we're talking all about kind of the world of movement and how the body holds our experiences and how different movements and different practices can help us release some of that stuff.
Yeah. And the coworker who I was on the phone with is that coworker who, like, you know, there's always that coworker who knows you really well. Like, it's not that who's like, and she's like, you need to let go of your perfectionism because I know you want everyone to, you want to do 100%, but this just isn't, you're not going to get credit, you know, and she was really speaking to what I needed to do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know, it's just disappointing when people aren't who you think people as humanity should be.
Yes.
And
100%.
So it was like, oh, this is my body not just reacting to this one instance, but maybe like pulling up trauma. So yeah, so this is going to be an interesting conversation, which I'm excited to have.
Absolutely. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest for the day. Her name is Nisha Srivastava, and she is a certified level 3 CHEK practitioner and holistic lifestyle coach, celebrated for her over 32 years of experience in Pilates, yoga, and a diverse array of movement practices. Amazing, all of it. Her journey, beginning at dance college and rekindled through her rediscovery of Pilates, has led her to become a vanguard in holistic health and movement. And with a focus on the fascia and the body's interconnected movement patterns, Nisha challenges conventional health paradigms to uncover transformative wellness insights. Obviously, right on point for our conversation today. I'm going to go ahead and just welcome you to the show, Nisha. We have so much information about you, but I want to dive into questions with you. I just want to like I'm excited and I want to get into it. So welcome to the show. We're thrilled to have you. Thank you for being here. And how are you today? I like to ask everybody, how are you? How are you doing on this lovely Friday day?
Well, first of all, good afternoon, Tova and Riley. And I never answer the question, how are you? Because when we ask somebody, how are you? It doesn't encourage us to think out the box. We say, yeah, fine. But really deep down, we're thinking, I'm not okay. So
Yeah.
I instead ask you, what's your win of the week? So we have a little bit of gratitude. So I'm going to answer back. Instead of saying, how are you to me, I'm going to answer with my win of the week. So everybody we meet in life brings us a beautiful gift, whether we like it or not. And we're all interacting with each other at a cellular level all the time. So my win of the week is I received a beautiful new client to my studio who's got incredible chronic pain and has got a different issue that I have not dealt with for a long time. So we're all learning all the time. And every time we meet somebody or have a different experience in life, we have a different reaction and reflection. And we have to go deep within because we know all the answers. So that's my win of the week. So I'm going to turn it back on to you two, Riley and Tova, rather than asking you both, how are you? What's your win of the week?
I love that. So we had an entire season actually where we spent talking about, rather than asking people, how are you? Because you're right. Like Tova and I will tell you honestly how we are, but not many people will. And so we spent the season asking, how is your heart? And the idea being, let's dive into like the emotional place that you're living in this moment, because obviously it changes day to day. And so when you're asking somebody, how is your heart? It forces somebody to stop and think like, oh, well, I was going to just say I'm fine and move on, but actually, these four things are happening. So my win of the week, and it's a great question, is that we are getting in a lot of interviews this week, and it's been a rough summer for both of us, to be honest, but particularly my family has been sick nonstop since June, and with like acute awful illnesses. And this has never happened in my life. We've never experienced anything like this before. It's been very stressful and upsetting and challenging. And despite all of that, I'm happy that I'm able to have these kinds of conversations with folks that maybe I wouldn't be able to interact with, because it's really uplifting to my heart. And it really like gives me more energy and spirit in order to sort of cope with and manage the other things going on in my life. So I'm pretty excited about where unhealthy coping mechanisms in the past would have been to shut down and withdraw, that I'm sort of turning that around. And I don't know, that's exciting to me. So it's a great question. And thank you for asking that. Tova, I don't know if you want to answer and then dive into our topic.
So I will answer. And it's interesting because I think my answer is very similar to yours in that, so my win of the week, I think so as I said this morning, it's been a trying, 15, 16, 24 hours, where I have had some experiences, interactions with people that have been testing my boundaries that I have set. And instead of maybe going back to old coping mechanisms or internalizing it all, I have been like, oh, this is testing my boundaries, and I'm still keeping the boundaries there, but it's making it harder. I'm going to reach out, and I'm going to, I called Riley this morning and said, let's talk about this, because I want to talk about how tiring not the conversation was, but keeping my boundaries up was. And then I called that coworker and said, I need a pep talk. I need a conversation to talk about this. And like you said, not going back to old coping mechanisms or not internalizing things that I don't want to internalize, because I know how to handle them. And I know maybe when I'm not handling them well as well. And that feels like a big win. I think a lot of times people, all of us, think that when we're like, I don't know, I think we assume that somebody like a Brene Brown or Oprah or something, they just, when you get to that level, you just handle everything so well and easy peasy. And I don't think that's what happens. I think it just means that what you need to handle something, you know, like when you need to ask for help, or when you need to, or you recognize like, oh, this is a flag, I'm flagging this as like an old coping mechanism is coming back, and I need to go meditate. Or like I would definitely would have been meditating if I would have had more time before this call. And so that will happen as well at some point today. And so that's definitely like the win of just being like, okay, like, hey, you acknowledged, like, it's, you know, the boundaries weren't so tight that nothing broke through, but at least you acknowledged that, like, they're still holding.
Yeah.
So we love to start with our interviews with not necessarily an easy question. And, you know, one of the things, as Riley explained, that we're talking about this whole season is this idea of unbecoming, and sort of figuring out what are the things that we've been carrying with us throughout our lives that maybe we don't even realize or didn't realize for so long that we were carrying with us. So if you had the power to, maybe undo isn't the right word, but maybe put down, not carry with you, something learned or a mistaken belief that you had carried with you throughout your life that you wish you didn't carry, what might that be?
Well, I would say we do have the power to change everything. So Dr. Bruce Lipton, I don't know whether you've heard of him, has done a lot of research. And you're correct, trauma does store in the body, and it's passed down from generation to generation and generation. So he did, first of all, a study on people who were in the concentration camps, and that trauma was carried down to 2 or 3 generations afterwards. However, cells are always listening and responding, so we do have the ability to change if we have the right coaching and the right environment. So his quote is, "The genes load the gun, the environment pulls the trigger." And my answer to you, Tova, if I could change anything, I actually wouldn't, because everything in my life, every pain, my upbringing as an Anglo-Indian, my bringing up in the UK, my travel, the tragedies that have occurred in my family have made me the most amazing person that I am. And all we have to do is undo, like you say. And in India, we have this saying, and it actually comes from Osho, called no mind. So we are very much human doings rather than human being. So we're always doing, and we live in our heads. So it goes back to what Riley said, how is your heart? So there's a beautiful quote, and I think it was from Gandhi, saying a loving heart is a clear mind. And when I am even busier, I need to meditate for 2 hours today. So that came from Gandhi. So I wouldn't change anything, but my skills, I've learned more as a maturer age, and that has come from a place of wisdom. And we all did silly things, lots of mistakes with diet, lifestyle, reactions in relationships, family dynamics and things in the past, materialisms. But you know what? I wouldn't change it, because they have made me the building blocks who I am.
Yeah, I think I think that's most people's answer once you've gotten to a certain point in your sort of personal development journey, for lack of a better description. I'm curious to understand sort of what your journey has been like. Like, I read your bio, I know where you're at now, but I want to know how you got there. So can you walk us a little bit through your past and like what steps you've taken to get to where you are and sort of the why of it?
Yes, of course. So I started off as a dance background because I was always a mover at school, or I always wanted to move. And when I finished school, I went to dance college, and the dance college led me on to working in the entertainment industry. I worked as a magician's assistant. I worked as a dancer. I did acting roles. And that led me on to later on working in Bollywood over in India. And I worked for a very famous film director called Devanand, and it was his son Sunil Ananda worked from. And from there, when I was in my mid to late 20s, my brother unfortunately passed away at the age of 19. So that actually, everything happens for my growth. Nothing happens to me. So then I started to ask questions in the universe. Why? Because usually when we experience some sort of tragedy or hardship, and it doesn't have to be bereavement, we start to go in and ask why. So I went in and asked why, and I was looking around at different things, and I still wanted to move because I was still 27, and I discovered a Pilates course. I rolled onto the Pilates course. The Pilates led into many different areas, right from yoga. I then discovered Paul CHEK, who's a holistic therapist who talks about diet, lifestyle, belief system, the planet. And it really blossomed from there, because you can turn your pain into power, but you have to be willing to take the action. So every day when we wake up, we have two choices. We're either going to be the victim or the creator. And I agree with what Tova said. If you've been brought up in an environment where everybody is a victim archetype and you're always complaining about everything happened to you, that is your go-to behavior. And you actually become the 5 most people that you hang around with. So if you're not prepared to change your environment, and you're not prepared to learn off the internet, learn off podcasts like yourself, get yourself moving with people who are going in a better direction, you're always going to stay the same. So that's a little bit of my journey. And I now work with people all around the world, from chronic pain, right up to celebrities, right up to professional footballers, and nearly all entrepreneurs and elite athletes and celebrities and very, very famous singers I have worked with have come from extreme pain, or there has been some form of tragedy in their life which has given them the push. So I would say pain is your superpower if you want to see it that way.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And certainly on I guess on a smaller scale, I say that I have experienced something very, very similar. I think I would like for our listeners to sort of understand, if you come from that position of pain, right, of trauma, of everyone has some sort of trauma, everyone has experienced pain, the degree is inconsequential, really. When you come from that, what specifically for you, was there a catalyst that allowed you to turn, and you mentioned looking inwards, right, and sort of go asking a lot of whys? Was there a catalyst that allowed you to turn that outwards to get to where you are? Like, what was there, somebody you talked to? Was there an event where you're like, okay, I've looked inward and now it's time to bring this out into the world and share my knowledge and experience?
Yes, I didn't actually choose to go for counseling or anything like that. And I understand talking and therapy is very, very good for so many people. And it helps to get them off the chest. And listen to that saying, get off my chest. So it goes back to what you said about the heart. The heart stores the emotions. But for me, talk is cheap and action is the only answer. So I chose to do things like ecstatic dance and freestyle dance, because when we do dance, we're actually connecting to the subconscious. So when I'm talking to you today, it's actually the behavior, the style that I'm talking to you with is coming from my 95% programming. Only 5% is actually conscious. So when you're going into things like dance, artwork, music, drumming, singing, wailing, these actually act at a subconscious level, and we have the ability to change. Now, the reason why that is, when you're acting at a subconscious level, singing, dancing, doing artwork, creating in any sort of way, it moves the energy through our body up the chakra system. So we all get blockages in our body at an energetic level. So most people's blockages will always be the heart level. And that's where the sayings come from. I died of a broken heart. You're pulling on my heartstrings. So the pleura, or the fascia of the heart, is feeling the emotion of sadness, grief, and sorrow. So when you move energetically, no matter what you do, or you get into a frenzy of some sort of meditative work, it can be even running as a meditation. You move energetically. all your trauma up through blocked emotions, and you also help to lubricate joints. So that was my way of dealing with things. And I don't want to knock any way, because everybody's pain is their personal way of dealing with things. And there's a very, very famous psychotherapist or psychologist called the Ballerina of Auschwitz. And she's very, very famous. And she wrote in the New York Times, and she was in the Holocaust. And she said one famous quote that really stuck with me: there is no hierarchy in trauma. Everybody's trauma is important to them. So if my trauma is more than yours, it doesn't mean that yours is any, more or less. It's how you're dealing with it and where you are in your life. And our behavior is always a reflection of how we're dealing with our life and what we are encountering. However, I would like to say our body is our reflection of our belief system. So if we want to change our belief system, we need to change what we're looking at, what we're listening at, what we're speaking, what we're not saying, what we're holding back through our throat chakra. So by educating myself, by going on many workshops, and I have the ability to do so, and many conventions, and I have the finances to do so, and studying with people like Paul CHEK and other people from around the world, I managed to get different perspectives. And I'm also a traveler as well, so I love traveling abroad. And every time you go abroad, you learn that culture, their lifestyle, the way they do things, because there is no right or wrong. We all have different ways of doing things, but it's whether it's working. The proof is always in the pudding. Is it working? And if it's not working, you need to change to what you're doing.
So I have a very, basic question for you. And it is a personal question, and it is a question that is very timely. My cousin is dealing with a sort of lifelong diagnosis of cancer, and she just had surgery, and she's dealing with she gets chemo every couple weeks, and she just received, we were just texting yesterday, actually, this is so timely. And she was saying how, she's feeling very tired, and, she just had back surgery. So she's not, there's not a lot of physical options for her. And she was saying how she feels disconnected from her body. And I had suggested, like, maybe Reiki would be an option for her, and she's hoping that with insurance, there might be some options. But to expand it, I think a lot of people feel disconnected from their body. Riley and I are fortunate in that we have, Riley does Reiki, but we have both experienced the benefits of Reiki. We've both done other things, and we both work really hard, I think, to practice grounding techniques for ourselves. And so we can hear what you're saying and think like, yes, this makes sense to me. But for somebody who's listening, and either because of a trauma that has taken them out of their bodies, or because of illness. I was diagnosed with cancer last year, and I'm very lucky that somehow it didn't take me out of my body. Like I think because of Riley and I, because of this podcast, I was able to stay in my body. But for people who are listening and don't have that understanding of that connection with their body, they're not singers, professional singers, they're not footballers, so they don't have that. How do you talk to somebody about making that connection so that they can feel truly at home in their body when they just go about their life, they deal with their kids, and maybe they exercise even, but they just don't have that connection that you're speaking about with their body?
Yes, I'm completely with you, Tova. So we get disconnected by many, many things. So most of the things we get disconnected by is our food chain, media, TV, and the environment in which we're in, and also the trauma. And I'm sorry to hear that the cancer treatment that she's going through is leaving her in chronic pain. So she will feel disconnected. And when you're in pain, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional, the only way you can have some sort of grounding is actually to leave your body. So when I'm coaching people, a lot of people have actually left their body in order to cope with the pain at a physiological and spiritual level. However, the way we connect to our body is always to connect to the planet. So I say to people is start getting out in nature. Take your shoes and socks off. And I say this to all my cancer patients, go and stand in the grass, get out, hug the trees. That's number one. Number two, eat clean. So pesticides, rodenticides, herbicides, all these things, EMF vibration contribute to our, level of suffering that we have. Try and eat as clean as you can and as many green vegetables that grow above the ground. Number three is breathing. So learning to take slow, deep breaths, something like a 4 square breath practice. Number four is drinking clean water. So using a filter system or something as a Brita filter jug. Number five is mindset. She could be listening to podcasts and get better informed. So if I was suffering from something like that, I would learn to look at two opinions from both different sides. What are the pros? What I'm going through and what are the cons. So she's got the ability to search. Somebody she could look up is Paul Leadersees, who's written some amazing thing. She's written an amazing book called It's in a Tear. And that gives you a lot of background to cancer and a lot of people who've written while they're in that suffering. Number five is movement. Even if she's just moving in the body as she's lying down and just moving herself, putting her arms up over her head, starting to get some flow of organs. I teach people what's called the chi stick or the chi squat. They can do that sitting down. And number seven would be sleep. So those are the ways we connect to our body, and they are so simple but so disregarded. So we have got so disconnected as a planet, and what we are doing isn't working. So we've got more cancer, more suicide, more mental health, more dementia, Alzheimer's, more medical problems than ever before. What we are doing isn't working. We are using an outdated system which only treats symptoms and not the root cause. All medical people mean their best, most of them. But I would say if we're only looking at pharmaceutical drugs and we're not looking at the spiritual, mental, and emotional state of how we got there, the cancer reoccurs, the back pain reoccurs, the depression comes back. So the way we get back into our body is to, do those 7 steps I told you. And then we start to change ourselves. And when we are coming from a place of health, we make better choices, better decisions. We're not so reactive. We come from a place of reflection. And I read a quote today: it takes 100 years to mess up society, but it takes us 10 years to get us out of that mess. So we could spend 10 years doing this and we would get out of all the homelessness, which I'm following all around the world, particularly in the States, all the problems, and we can do it. But I hate to be toughed over. It's about money. And because money is what makes the world go round, this information isn't readily available.
We need to take a quick break, so we'll do that. When we come back, I want to talk, Nisha, about sort of, if you could explain to folks, what does it mean to connect the mind and the body? But let's take a quick break before we do that, and we'll be right back after this, everyone. Well, hey there, dream chaser. Are you ready to make the next 12 months of your life unforgettable? Introducing the Year of You, a groundbreaking new goal system group that's about to redefine the way we approach personal growth. Join us with a community of like-minded individuals committed to unlocking their full potential. With expert guidance, personalized strategies, kind-hearted accountability, and a supportive network, the Year of You is more than just a goal-setting group. It's a whole movement. Don't just dream about it, achieve it. Click in the link in our show notes, or go ahead and visit us at goboldlyinitiative.com/Year of You to learn more today. Let's embark on a transformative journey together towards becoming the best versions we can be. The year of you, where your goals become reality. Okay, so welcome back to the show. Before the break, I was mentioning that I would love to get your perspective and sort of explanation of how the mind and body are actually connected. Like, why do we not know? Like, why do we not know that? Right? Why are we not talking about how they're connected, and what does it look like? How does that work?
Well, this actually came from the old-fashioned cadaver days. So there's a beautiful book by a lady called Candice Pert. So originally, the separation of the mind and body actually came from the church and the cadaverous. So when the body snatchers used to dig up the bodies, they actually came to an agreement with the church in the end so that the cadaverist could take the body and learn from it and do the dissection, but the church kept the soul and the spirit. Hence, medicine looks at what's called the slave joints, which is the musculoskeletal, and, in separation, they treat the symptom, but really not the hierarchy of survival. So when we have to survive in life, there is a way that we survive. So when people go to hospital, they rarely go to hospital, with with a thought problem. It's always something which shows up in the body. But when we are doing things, all our behavior comes from our mindset. So first of all, on the hierarchy of survival, it's the belief system. So the belief system comes first. So what we do is a reflection of our belief. What the next thing is breathing. Breathing is the first thing that we interact with in the world when we come out of our mother's womb and when we die. So when we die, we lose our last breath. When we come out, we get a smack on our breath, and that's the first breath. Then after that, it's our vestibular, which is our balance, which is the eyes, ears, nose, and throat. So that keeps us in an upright position in order so we can survive and we can harvest and we can feed ourselves. Number 4 is the neck. And that is the most proprioceptive place of the body. Then we go down into the organs, which is number 5. And the last part is the slave joints. So when we end up in hospital, we're showing things like, say, cancer, broken hips and broken knees and all these different things, which are not always our fault. Of course not. They're all the different things of environment and things which have happened to us over a period of time. But it's the belief system which controls us. So we're brought up through schooling, education, government, and religion. So as I go back to that quote, the genes load the gun, the environment pulls the trigger. So there's beautiful research which comes about why schooling, was brought in. Well, my understanding that schooling was introduced through the plantation owners. And the reason the plantation owners introduced schooling is so that the slaves only knew what to think instead of how to think. So it's a very long explanation, but that's where the disconnection comes from. When somebody murders somebody, the physical body is doing it, but it's the thought behind it. And the emotions always hold in the body. I've seen so many things with clients, they've had 3 or 4 back operations and nothing's changed, but then something happens at home so simple, and then that changes the pain. And of course, all pain is multifactorial, so it's not so simple. But on the hierarchy of survival, if we commit suicide, guess what? It's the thought pattern first, which tells us to commit suicide. It's not the body doing it. So in a nutshell, I'll just run that through. The thinking, stinking thinking. Then it's your breathing. I missed out one, mastication, because if we can't eat, we can't survive. Then it's the cervical neck, which is the most proprioceptive place of the body. Then it's the organs, because when you have a heart attack, that reflects out, and the slave joints come at the bottom. But the medical joint system tends to treat by symptom rather than root cause.
Or does. My experience lately has shown me that in abundance. I would love to hear what you think some common misconceptions people have about sort of movement practices and how the mind-body connection actually works. And like, what in your practice, in your life, what do people come to you and they're like, and they say, and you're like, no, that's not That's not how it works.
Yeah. Well, people say to me, number one, I don't have time. Well, there's always time, because when I sit down and go through paperwork with people, we spend roughly now 3 to 4 hours minimum on devices a day. So if you think of a plate of food, in order to do something, you have to take something off. So it goes back to core values. So our behavior is depicted by our core values, and our core values come from our belief system. So if I'm making time to go on my phone, watch TV, doom scroll, gossip, I've got the time, but my time is not being allocated. So that's the first misconception. Number two is I can't afford it. There are tons of things free. So there are podcasts free, YouTube, Vimeo. We have local libraries here which are buzzing with information. You can go on all sorts of events, and there's something called Meetup, which is worldwide, where you can join groups for free with people who have the same interests, where you can bounce ideas off each other, whether it's computer walking, where you can start to get out of that background of, that stuck analysis. And number three is my circumstances are different. This happened to me, so therefore I'm like that. No, that happened to you, but you're relaying that story over and over again. And we all have a story, Riley. And if we keep repeating that story, that embodies us. That becomes the embodiment. So I write a lot about fibromyalgia and trauma, and so much dis-ease is where the body's not at ease. Depression, a submission of the emotions, divorce, a disconnection from the self and others. So we need to change our story by using resources, get us out of that comfort zone in order to change. And remember, change is difficult. It's easy to stay where we are than it is to change. So, people don't want hardship. They don't want uncomfortable. It's better the devil you know than the devil you don't know. But the hardest thing to do is to change our behavior from yesterday, last week, 2 weeks ago. And what you resist is you persist. So if I don't change my diet today, my business plan today, my partner, my job, it's going to be there in 6 months' time.
So let's say somebody says, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take something off my plate, and I'm going to put maybe, I apparently have lots of family that I can use as examples on this issue. So we were on vacation, and my dad was like, you've told me about chair yoga. Yeah. I want to see it. So I sent him a link, and he did chair yoga one day when we were on vacation. And he was like, so will I feel better right away? And I said, well, I don't know. But he did it once too, when he was at home. And, I guess the question, the thing that's hard, right? And is that when you start a new habit or a new practice, people want results right away, right? And they want to know that suddenly it's going to work, whatever it is that's supposed to work. So I guess my first question is not what's supposed to happen, but how does it happen, right? So like how is doing, whether it's yoga or Pilates, how does that help their body release, whether it is the pain or the trauma or the stress that somebody is holding? And then the follow-up would be is, what could somebody expect maybe 6 months later? Yes. that they could not, obviously 6 days later or a week later, but maybe 6 months or 6 years, that they could expect to look back and say, oh yes, it did do that. What could they expect to see?
Well, our posture is always a reflection of our emotions and how we're feeling. So if you see somebody's depressed or just being bereaved or lost all their money or their house, or they don't have money to get their operation, they'll be forwards and down. And Vincent van Gogh beautifully explained this in his beautiful paintings about depression. They were dark, the emotions were all in. Now, somebody who's upright, and I call this a green light posture, is ready to face the world. So I would say one of the benefits of movement, not just Pilates and yoga, is that a strong body reflects into a strong mind. So when you are physically strong, Your organs move and pump better. Your heart has a better way of connecting to the brain or connecting to the mind, because the Institute of Heart Math talks about the heart-brain connection, and you have a better ability to deal with problems in life. So remember, when we are frightened and we go into a place of fear, we go like that. So when we are strong and we're ready to take on the world, we go like that. So a Pilates and yoga practice after a period of 6 months, depending on the person's physiological standing before, where they were, you know, how much they were doing before, the quality of the tissues, I would say, is show more strength in the body, more strength in the mind, more awareness to breath, better sleep, you know, all these little things, and better connection to the self and others. And the best exercise to do, people will say to me, what's the best exercise to do? I don't want to do chair yoga. I don't want to do Pilates. And I'll say the best exercise to do is the one you are prepared to do each day. So if it's just walking, you know, even round the block once, that's the best exercise. So you start where you are.
You got me with goosebumps on that one. It's such a great point, and it seems you say it and it's like, oh, of course that's what you do, but not everyone thinks that way. And I think a lot of us are recovering perfectionists or active perfectionists, and so we think if we can't do, you know, the high intensity workout 7 days a week for an hour, then why are we doing anything? So I think that's such a great bit of advice. I do want to take another quick break. And when we come back, let's talk about sort of how your practice has changed your life and what your day-to-day looks like. So we will be right back after this break, everyone.
Hey, pod friends, it's us again. Looking for a place to collaborate, an opportunity to share your knowledge? Have you been working so hard on a podcast, book, course, product, or retreat? Do you have insights that could light up our podcast? Well, we want to hear from you. We would love to support you in all that you are and do. Join us at Go Boldly Initiative, where we celebrate diverse perspectives and share the wisdom of our incredible community. Whether you're an expert, a hobbyist, or simply love learning, we invite you to reach out with your ideas. Visit our website at goboldlyinitiative.com/podcast guests to pitch the show, or shoot us an email at hello@goboldlyinitiative.com to talk all things collaboration, advertising, and affiliation opportunities. Become part of our growing family. Let's make learning an adventure together.
Okay, so welcome back to the show. Before the break, I mentioned I wanted to hear a bit more about kind of what your day-to-day practice looks like. If you have a routine or if you change it up, what do you do to help release stuff from your body that maybe you were holding, or you know, just to encourage that the kinds of things you're talking about, the like cellular growth, the positive mindset, the sort of loving world view. What does that look like for you?
Okay, so I'm not going to lie, I'm always working practice, and that's how I feel I have a better connection to work with people. So I have a studio which is about 45 minutes to an hour's drive away. So I find having a morning routine sets me up for the day, but the morning routine will only work if I get adequate sleep. And adequate sleep only works if I'm working in conjunction with everything in my life. So like all of you, I get monkey mind a lot. I'm also going through menopause, and I'm doing my menopause naturally. So when you're doing menopause naturally, you have to look at the disruption of hormones. So I'm actually not focusing on estrogen and progesterone. I'm focusing on the 3 basic hormones which every human being needs in order to survive. So that's insulin, adrenaline, and cortisol. So when these are in balance and I'm not eating foods which spike my blood sugar, and I'm getting to bed on time, and I'm not looking at the internet and dealing with emails late at night, I have a better ability to sleep. So when I have to get up and go to work, it is pretty tough. So I'm on the motorway for 12 minutes past 6 in the morning. I find the drive very, very stressful because it's so dark here in the winter, and particularly driving in the rain. I find it really really difficult post lockdown, changing lanes because everybody drives like a madman. And I arrive to the gym early, and I only do this 3 days a week. I do a workout in the gym for about 45 minutes to an hour, and it's all strength training. So it's all weights. So it will be squats, deadlift, lunge pattern, pull pattern, push pattern, a little bit of abdominals, corrective exercise. Then I'll go for a beautiful steam or a sauna. I'll have a swim, and then I'll go to work, and then I'm ready to start my day. Then I usually come back late in the evening. On the days when I'm working from my home studio, I have a more leisurely approach. I like to wake up naturally. I like to journal in the morning from my bed and reflect my thoughts. And I like to do my creativity. I always like to write, and I find writing a great way to express myself. And when I'm disconnected, if I've had anything like white starches, sugar, alcohol, anything like that, I notice it really disrupts my digestion. So, I get severe swelling in my stomach. I'll get pain in my knees because the dumping ground for the digestive system or the gut is always in the lower extremity. And if I'm worried about something and I've got monkey mind and I'm not doing meditation, guess what? I don't sleep. And sleep is everything. It's the most underestimated thing. So, the pain teacher is always talking to us, and the easy thing is to go and grab medication all the time. But the medication only treats the symptom and not the root cause. It doesn't look at the behavior of how I got there, the belief system, or the mechanism of what I learned. So a lot of my reactions and behavior, and it would be the same for you two, are what I learned off my parents. So I'm just replicating that, even though I'm an adult. So it's learning to go deep within, do more meditation, because I feel that is the way out of it. And like you, I don't want to do it a lot of the time. I'm a type A personality. I'm doing instead of being, but that's something which I need more of.
What would you say for someone? So all of that, I think Tova and I are both very similar to everything you just described, right? But if the sleep doesn't work out, right? If you get derailed, if you get off course, what do you do to bring yourself back around? What do you do to reset?
Yeah, well, a lot of people aren't in a position, so it's very difficult with the economic climate in the UK, and it must be difficult in the States as well. Yes. So a lot of clients that I'm teaching, they're working 12-hour shifts. So you're driving half an hour to get to work, you're working a 12-hour shift, and that might be, in the hospital. A lot of them are drivers, which is constantly tense. Shift workers, they're working early morning shifts for the post, working in warehouses, and you're right, it's really, really difficult to do. So I say little changes slowly. So even on your lunch break, if you're getting one, go and sit in the car, don't scroll on the phone, trying to eat slowly, trying to do your food prep at the weekend because, everybody's just grabbing convenience food, just trying to do the best where you are and asking for help. And this is why we need more community and tribe, because when we look at native cultures and, the shamans and these holistic, doctors, which are about all pharmaceutical drugs are synthetic forms of the original medicines which came from plant forms. So we need to go back and tribe and community where we can support single parents, support people who are going to end up homeless, because everything comes down to love. And all addiction is safe love or love without responsibility. So when we feel loved, and this comes from childhood, when we feel love, we are love. But when we don't feel loved and we've missed that love through some sort of thing from childhood, that usually shows up as trauma and addiction. So it's extremely hard, and not everybody can do it, but you do the best, and any little thing that you can do that works for you is getting you there.
I do just want to highlight, I don't know that I have a question,
yes.
but I do want to highlight something that you've been saying, quite a lot throughout everything you're saying, which is to really just to do what you can, right? Which, is, if it's walking around the block, if that's what you're going to do every day, to have that be the thing that you do every day. If you can do some meal planning, do some meal planning, right? You're not saying that you need to plan breakfast, lunch, and dinner and all your snacks, right? If it means that you can pack your lunch each day, then do that. Like, if, and I think that so often, and I know Riley and I are guilty of this, and I think a lot of people are guilty of this, that if we can't do everything well, we kind of throw our hands up and go, well, I can't do that, so I'm just not going to. And, you know, you get to a certain point at night and it's like, well, if I can't get 8 hours of sleep, it's going to be a bad night's sleep anyway. I might as well just stay up and have a really bad night's sleep. And I think that, you know, 7.5 hours is better than 6 hours of sleep, and a walk around the block is better than not walking around the block. And I think that this approach to life gives ourselves a lot of kindness and grace, but is also healthier. I mean, it is also healthier, and there is a lot of benefit to just do what you can. And so I really, like I said, I don't know that I have a question here, so I hope Riley has one coming, but I do want to just highlight what you're saying throughout this, because I think it's easy when we listen to podcasts or read books to get caught up into all of these other amazing things that you're saying. But really, I think the most important thing that you've said throughout this whole thing is just do what you can.
Yes. And it's baby steps. If we change 1% in a month, I say to people, just drink more water over the course of 12 months. Guess what? That's 12%. So it's little steps. And we need to remember, Tova and Riley, I'm in my 50s. I don't know about you two, but when my mother brought me up, women didn't work. But in the 60s and 70s, women didn't have to work. My mother worked originally as a nurse, and then she was able to take time off to have myself and my brother. But now people don't get that choice. Both parents are working, they're working all day, they're coming in, they've got this stress of money and all different things. So it's do what you can. And every time we judge and point the finger at someone, guess what? There's 3 pointing back for us. So we have to have empathy and compassion for each other. And we have to learn to connect before we correct. So there's a beautiful, some beautiful work by Marshall Rosenberg called Nonviolent Communication. So when we learn to be better listeners, because we've all got 2 ears, rather than shouting at each other, we can help each other, but we become poor listeners. And also, you know, society teaches us that we can only be happy by being consumerists. You know, Robin Sharma talks about this, who wrote The Monk Who sold his Ferrari, that we have to have X, Y, and Z to be in order to be happy. I'm not going to say we don't need money. Money is a very, very important form of energy. It helps us to pay our bills, keep a roof over our head, helps us to have amazing experiences and also have food. However, we're driven by consumerism, and particularly during the lockdowns in the UK, we were all buying on Amazon instead of finding simple things and free things in life, you know, just by doing things like singing, chatting with each other at meal times, not having the television on, not looking for the outside and going from the inside out. So we're learning to be rather than do.
I think, yes, to all of that, of course. And I think also, you know, having that self-compassion component is essential, right? Like you can't, it's very hard to be compassionate with other people when you're not compassionate towards yourself. And so, as we've all kind of said throughout this conversation, doing what you can, where you can, when you can is great, and is what we can all sort of strive for. And being kind to yourself when you can't is also, you know, a necessary component of the process. Acknowledging when you need a break, you need to take time off, you need to escape, whatever it is, allowing yourself to be and not do, as you just said, is so hard and so frowned upon. And yet one of the best things I think we can do for ourselves. We do need to wrap up. So we're going to ask you some quick response questions. Tova, if you want to dive in.
I love those. They're my favorite. So the way this works is we will ask you this, or I will ask you these questions. It doesn't need to be like a 1-word answer or anything, but we can't do any follow-ups. So these are just for fun, to people to get to know you a little bit. So our first question, What is your favorite way to unwind after a long day?
Definitely. Well, I would say my unwinding is in the morning, a steam room or a sauna.
Mhm.
What is one thing on your bucket list that you haven't done yet?
Um, ooh. Go to Mexico City and look at the works of Frida Kahlo.
It's amazing. Do it.
No comments.
Sorry.
What's your go-to comfort food?
Go-to comfort food would be dark chocolate, but 85% or more cacao.
If you could instantly master any skill, what would it be?
Having no mind. So getting out, getting the changing our belief system and our programming and having no mind.
What is a hobby you've always wanted to pick up but haven't yet?
I started golf many years ago. I've packed it in to do my business. I'd like to return to golf.
And lastly, describe yourself in 3 words.
Loving, compassionate, giving.
I love it. I loved all your answers and I want to talk about them at length, but we have kept you quite a long time and I don't want to take up too much of your time. Also, we're very clearly kindred spirits. Those are similar answers to mine. Before we sign off for the week, can you let folks know where they can find you, how they can get in touch with you if they want to, all of those things?
Well, I'm very easy to find. You can just stick in the internet, Nisha Pilates, Nisha Srivastava, Nisha Yoga Anatomy, any of those. And I actually give a free ebook, which is Transformation with Nisha, which looks at diet, exercise, strength training, benefits of Pilates and yoga, hydration and sleep. And they can get that off me for free.
Fantastic. We are going to put all of that in the show notes for you guys as you're listening. So you can connect with Nisha. We encourage you to do so. She is obviously fantastic and a wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much for being on the show. I have so many follow-ups, so maybe you'll get an email from me. But we really, really appreciate it. Appreciate the energy and the time that you spent with us today. It's been lovely.
Thank you, Tova. Thank you, Riley.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Thanks so much for listening to We Go Boldly podcast. We know you're busy and we love spending time with you.
If you enjoyed this week's episode, let us know. Head to Apple Podcasts right now to rate and review our show. While you're there, be sure to click that subscribe button.
Want more us time? Follow us on all the socials at Go Boldly Together.
Want even more us time? As in all the coaching pizzazz. Find us at goboldlyinitiative.com for all the info.
We will be back with more excitement, research, and deep thoughts next week.
Until then, keep on being the bold, brave, amazing people we know you already are.
The Power Moms Network, empowering moms to lift the world.